Welcome to the NWI.com Political Roundtable for Wednesday, November 23rd. I'm Robert Blaszkiewicz, Assistant Managing Editor of The Times. Here with me today, Doug Ross, Editorial Page Editor of The Times, and Times columnist Mark Kiesling. Happy Thanksgiving and welcome to this week's edition of the Roundtable. We'll start off talking about the right-to-work issue, which has been an ongoing issue in Indiana.
That's been on the table for some time, hasn't it, Robert?
It sure has. This week, it's been interesting because the Republican Majority Leader, House Speaker Brian Bosma, kind of laid down the gauntlet, didn't he?
Well, and Senate President David Long, too. I mean, this is, to them, this is going to be the hot issue, their top legislative priority of the new session, which starts in January.
Right.
They had the Organization Day on Tuesday. Well, we're going to be talking about this for some time to come because this is going to be a really contentious issue. What we're talking about with right to work. Well, it is. What we're talking about is the right to work being you wouldn't necessarily have to pay the union in a closed shop, a union to represent you.
You could reap all the benefits of being in the union, which is getting to enjoy the benefits of their union negotiated contract, but you wouldn't have to pay any dues.
Right, or really even any fee that would be in lieu of dues if you decided not to join. But so that's really contentious. You can imagine the unions.
Yeah, that's got a lot of labor leaders concerned. They say it leads to a lot of strife in the workplace in states where there is right to work. Instead of being seen as co-workers, it kind of pits one worker against the other. Imagine if you were paying your dues, which are not inconsequential, and the guy next to you on the assembly line isn't paying a dime, and he's getting the benefits of what you're paying for. You can imagine how that would rub some people the wrong way.
Now, the Republican argument in favor of this is that it will help spur economic development, that they will be able to lure companies that they wouldn't have otherwise.
Right, and unspoken is that it would also cut off money that would go to, presumably Democratic candidates.
Right, and I think that you cannot deny the politics that's wrapped up in this.
Absolutely.
Unions predominantly support Democratic candidates. You weaken the union, you lessen that flow of money that goes to Democratic candidates. So there is no doubt that the Republicans don't say it, but that's the motivate. I think that's the primary motivation behind this.
Oh, it's got it.
It's all politics.
Well,
isn't it, Mark?
as are most things coming out of Indianapolis. But one of the things that's kind of interesting is that when things are going well and when Mitch Daniels was running for a second term for governor, we were told by Republicans, Mitch being a Republican, how wonderful economic development already was in the state. And you could point to any number of businesses that some of his policies have brought into the state, and he's talked about that. And Governor Daniels has not been a go-to-the-mat proponent of right to work. He's been,
Well, I mean, he famously said, "Let's set aside the social strife for now and get our fiscal."
And there are other things. There are other goals he has, legislative things he wants to get done. And last year, this issue derailed a lot of that agenda.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and this is his last chance to do anything. This coming year.
Yeah, 2012, he will no longer, 2012 is his last year in office, and this is pretty much it for him.
Yeah, this is the legacy.
And the difference, it's not the last year in office for Brian Bosma. He's looking down the line at wanting to preserve that Republican majority, and he's seeing that this is the best way to do it. So you see differing political goals there, obviously. Let's move on locally to the Porter County, some issues in Porter County, interesting issues going on with the animal shelter and the Memorial Opera House, and the county's involvement and the difficulty that the county is having in operating those facilities.
Well, they're two different facilities, but they're really closely tied because the issue is how much money does the county keep injecting into those two facilities. They just threw some money to the Memorial Opera House yesterday to pay for salaries.
$250,000, of which $116,000 is going to salaries.
Right, no inconsequential amount.
Right, and they're going to salaries, as I understand it, to hire people that the positions did not exist before. So it's not like they're augmenting salaries of people who are already there.
Right.
They're going out and hiring, I believe, three new people. It's an economic stimulus. The question is, how much is the county responsible for providing economic stimulus?
Well, there's that, and then there's also if this is seed money for the salaries, and then the Opera House is expected to be, its programming should be self-sustaining. What does that mean in the future if they don't generate the money to pay for their own salaries?
Its executive director now says that it is self-sustaining, and I have no reason to not to believe that. But now it's going to have to be self-sustaining to the tune of $116,000 more.
Right, and in my mind, the county owns the building. It was built, Memorial Opera House. It was built as a memorial. The Grand Army of the Republic, the Civil War veterans, built it as a tribute to the soldiers and so forth. And so it's a county-owned asset that should be kept in perpetuity. But in terms of the programming, that's a different issue. So I'm not as keen at throwing money at that. In subsequent years, if this seed money works, great, and if it doesn't, a year from now, we'll have to see.
The question is, can it continue to be self-sustaining, and even if it is this something where the building should remain as a county treasure? It's a county landmark, but should the county be in the business of funding whatever entity goes into it?
Well, one option would be, and I've discussed this with some others, but one option would be to treat it like the Expo Center. For instance, the Porter County Expo Center, the kitchen operation, there's a concessionaire in there. The county owns the kitchen, but it's a concessionaire who operates it. So you could do the same thing with the Opera House potentially.
Yes. And that would seem to me to be a logical compromise.
Yeah. The other facility that's been in the news is the animal shelter. A few years back, they went to being a no-kill shelter, a noble goal to lessen the amount of animals that you're euthanizing, but in practice, it's been a difficult road for.
Well, if it's a no-kill shelter, you're going to be housing more animals. And they've had a lot of troubles there. The director the new director is no longer the director,
Did not last very long,
which says something. It didn't even last the 90 days.
Yeah.
So that tells me that there's probably too much political influence into the operation of the shelter, and two, this is another thing. It's ripe for privatization. Let somebody else handle that headache.
Isn't there also a question of some missing money?
Yes. Yes, and
which is, I think, one of the most serious problems.
Well,
face. I mean,
right.
if you're operating a budget that's fragile to begin with, missing money certainly does not help you.
And they take in a lot of cash because people come in and they pay cash to adopt an animal. One of the crazy things is, or at least I think it's crazy, is they pay cash to adopt an animal, but then they'll get some of the money back if they have the animal spayed or neutered, and then bring in the receipt. You know, oh, why isn't the animal just spayed or neutered as a matter of course?
Yeah.
If your goal is to reduce the population of strays, you know,
Right.
the animal shouldn't go out the door
Right.
until it's
Right.
neutered.
Let's move on to another subject, the 2012 elections, and we're seeing an interesting race shaping up in the 15th legislative district.
Right, which is basically St. John Township, or a portion of St. John Township.
Okay, kind of dire sheriff on St. John.
Right, yeah, roughly that area. And there's no incumbent currently because it's a newly created district. So,
And the districts were redrawn, and
right,
so I think we'd mentioned that
I didn't. It was unintentional.
you have some documents that show that
the
Chet
Chedobas
Dobas
had bought a condo,
has bought
Briar Ridge.
in Briar Ridge, which is within that new 15th district, which would move him out of the newly created 14th district and take him away from having to face Vernon Smith. Vernon Smith,
Who was also an incumbent Democrat
who's
from
also
Gary.
an incumbent Democrat. Now, the 14th is predominantly Glen Park, the Glen Park area of Gary, and North Merrillville, which are heavily African American. And the fact that Vernon Smith is also African American is going to play a role in I think in the outcome of the race. Should Chet Dobas choose to stay there and fight, I don't know that's a battle he can win.
Well, there's another factor here, and that's that Vernon Smith has been in there for quite a number of years, but Chet Dobas is tied with Pat Bauer for the longest-serving member of the House.
It's 21 terms, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I believe.
Mm-hmm. And so, you know, you have to wonder at some point, is an anti-incumbent move going to pound him?
And certainly the 15th district would be less Democratic than
Right.
the 14th.
The 15th district is where Dan Dumazich lives, and he's a huge shaker of the GOP money tree.
Yeah, a big
So,
Republican fundraiser.
Big. I mean, you know, he's held fundraisers that have, I think it was Mitt Romney, where
he was
raised,
behind Mitt Romney.
yeah, raised more money for Mitt Romney in one fundraiser than Mitt Romney's Indianapolis fundraiser that was, you know, officially held by the state party. So,
Yeah,
it says a
So
lot.
it should be that should be an interesting race.
It will be.
Definitely will, and we'll keep an eye on that along with all the other developments. And we thank you for watching this week, and we'll be back next week. Have a happy Thanksgiving, and we'll be back next week with another political roundtable.